morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today in this wonderful webinar. I have with me today an old friend who is not old. I've known Bob the mid-90s when he was speaking at our conferences there. He's been always an effective speaker. Since then, Bob went off, and I was just talking to him. He has written a number of books. When you listen to Bob today, you listen to a real practitioner who has been around for a while, who has actually helped many professionals in Agile. He has coached many people. He has his own methods and techniques in coaching. And I'm glad he's with us today to share with us all that. Bob has written 4 books. I'm going to let him share with you the details of the book. His latest book is on Agile Coaching, which has just been published. I just want to let you know that today Bob would like to have some interactions in this webinar, so he's gonna pose some questions or ask you to put a comment. If you feel comfortable writing your comment or your answer in the questions tab, that's fine, and I will share those with Bob. But if you rather speak, I'd suggest that you just go ahead and click on the hand next to your name, raise your hand, then I will open your microphone and you should be able to speak. I just do not want to open all microphones at once. So please let me know if you want to speak. I will be happy to open your microphone. Let's keep this as interactive as we can. I'm very thrilled to have Bob with me today. And I'm gonna let Bob tell you more about himself. Bob, I want to thank you so much again one more time for being with us today.
Oh, Magni, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending. We're going to just dive in. So the title of the topic today is Everyone is or Can Be an Agile Coach. And I'll explain to you that theme and what I'm trying to do. I'm not going to go much into my books or anything like that. This is just a little bit of an overview of me, some certifications I have that might be relevant for here. I don't know what else is probably the most relevant thing on that slide is the fact that I collect potato heads, at least to me, and potato heads make me smile. I have over 100 different potato heads. And the one, my favorite, is Darth Tater, which is the picture there. So hopefully you remember that. If you think of Bob Galen, you'll think of potato head. Maybe not as synonymous, but you can think of that. Here's our agenda for today. We have I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to talk about a model or a framework called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. If you haven't heard of it, that's fine. I'm just going to give you a quick, one-on-one overview of it. I'm going to talk a bit about the coaching mindset. What is a coaching mindset? And then we're going to talk about what a coaching conversation would look like. What are the parts of a coaching conversation? So there's 3 instructional parts to the talk today. And you can raise, as Magdi said, at any point you can raise your hand. And if you have a question, certainly interrupt me, I can handle that. But then towards the end, I want to try to reserve some time where I want to do a bit of practice. So I have some coaching scenarios, Agile coaching scenarios at the end, 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And I'm going to look for you to put yourself in the scenario, in the scene, and see how you would coach it. And I'd like to get more interaction towards the end, and then we'll close. So when I say, to me, coaching and coaching is a broad definition. If you think of an Agile coach, a lot of folks think of them as maybe a Scrum Master who's evolved into an Agile coach. I actually want to tease apart when I say anyone can be an Agile coach. Don't think of org charts and don't think of business cards and titles. Think of coaching competencies. What I'm trying to switch is the book, the title. I probably made a mistake in the title of the book in that it seems to address, it's a narrower focus towards Agile coaches. And I like the title, but it implies this narrow focus. And I literally want to change the world by saying, I think any role anywhere, team member, developer, tester, Scrum Master, product owner, leader, could benefit by looking at themselves as learning coaching competencies. And I think it would make you better at whatever it is that you do. And hopefully you can come to that conclusion by the end of this talk, and maybe I inspire you to do a little bit more learning in that space. So that's where we're going. Now, from a historical perspective, in 2010 or so, Lisa Adkins and Michael Spade created a what they called the Agile Coaching Competency Framework. And the deal with the framework was it had 4 primary stances. So coaching, you want to think of coaching as I'm in a mode, or I'm in a stance, and I don't stay there. I might move around. So there's a teaching stance. So think of it as coach as teacher. I'm coaching someone, but I'm coaching them by teaching them something, or I'm coaching them by mentoring them. And there's a slight difference between them. Teaching to me would be classic teaching. Mentoring would be more so showing them how to do it, maybe side by side. Think of mentoring as maybe apprenticeship would be something to think about there. Then on the right side of this slide, there's coach as the 2 other stances are facilitating meetings, etc. I hope you see sort of how this would align with the Scrum Master role if you all are familiar with Scrum Masters or familiar with Agile coaches. And then there's something called professional coaching, which is a 4th stance. That's typified by asking questions. So teaching is your teaching, you're sharing information. Mentoring is your showing. Facilitating is you're sort of collaborating with a group and trying to achieve group outcomes. Professional coaching is a little bit different and very powerful in that you're not teaching, you're helping someone discover the answer on their own by asking questions. So that stance has historically been you partner with a client, you ask client meaning who are you coaching, an individual or a group. Could be a Scrum team, could be an individual, could be a small group of leaders. Very often I'll use the term coaching a client, and that client represents an individual or groups. And professional coaching is helping them figure out their agenda, and then asking them really good questions so that they come to their own conclusions and next steps for themselves, rather than you telling them that they're broken. So we'll explore that. Those are the primary stances that Michael and Lisa created in this model. Now at the top you see Agile Lean Practitioner. That implies that a coach has some Agile chops or Agile experience. And then at the bottom you see technical mastery, some mastery competencies: business mastery, transformation mastery, and technical mastery. Normally coaches don't have expertise in all 3 of those at the bottom. They might specialize in one area, like business mastery, the business domain. And as a coach, then you're dancing. I think of it sometimes as you're dancing around the stances, if that resonates with folks. Meaning, depending on what your client needs from you, and part of the coaching mindset implied here is that, and remember, you're all coaches, so you're thinking of this, oh, I'm a developer on a team or a tester on a team, but you're also a coach. So who might be your clients? They might be team members. It might be your manager. You might coach your manager or help them to coach you. You're thinking of their agenda, and then you're switching stances to help them achieve their agenda. So you're sort of sensing what they need, and I might start out in professional coaching because that's asking questions. And then depending on the answers, I might say, oh, you know what? I need to switch into teaching mode. That would be helpful to my client. So I might go to a whiteboard. And then at the end, I might switch back to professional coaching stance and ask them some questions. Say, how did this go for you? How could I improve this experience? What did I do well? What could I do to improve? So I'm opening questions. All right. And maybe we need to continue this session. So think about your agenda for next time. And then you close that session. So the Agile Coaching Competency Framework has been sort of in existence for at least 10 years, 10 to 12 years, very useful. Now I want to talk about an evolution of that, and it's called the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. And I have some busy slides. I'll make sure that Magni can share the materials with you. So I'll get those to him. This is an extension. It's a little bit of a different view. It's a different model. So if you look here, some people call this the X-wing model because it has those cross-cutting X-wing to the 4 primary competencies, whereas the wheel is very much a well-rounded model. It has some additional competencies. So it maps to the X-wing model quite well, but there's a couple of extensions. It surfaced around 2016, 17 in the community, and it's evolving and it's maturing in the community. The Scrum Alliance is anchoring its coaching on it, is starting to anchor its coaching on it. I anchored my new book on the growth wheel, not the X-Wing model, because I felt like it had some extensions that were useful. And I'm going to explore those extensions a bit. So consider this part of the workshop like a primer on coaching. And take some notes where appropriate. But remember, pay attention, because I'm going to ask you, how would you coach these situations later on? So I want you to think in terms of, oh, what stance would I apply, etc. So this is the history of the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. I'm not going to read this slide. There's a link here on it. It just gives you some historical perspective. The current version is version 3.1, and that was released in June of this year. So this is the current view of it. I want to come into the middle of the wheel, which I find the center, the hub of the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel is interesting and powerful. And if you can read that, it says self-mastery. And I think that's a key to becoming an effective coach, independent of whether that's your job. And the self-mastery part, that's the hub of the wheel. And it starts with the, sort of the premise of, if you want to be a coach, coach yourself first. If you want to coach outwardly, coach, what are you doing yourself to walk your own talk? I hope that resonates with everyone. So the aspects of the self-mastery in the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel is your ethics. Are you considering your coaching ethics? One aspect of ethics is, for example, holding the client's agenda, not your own. If you've ever heard that term in Agile context of meet people where they are, not where you want them to be, that's part of the coaching mindset. That would be part of the ethics. It's not about me as the coach. It's not about my agenda. It's about the client's agenda. And am I serving the client? That sounds very agile, agile mindset centric, doesn't it? Self-awareness. Are you aware of your strengths and your weaknesses? Are you aware of the stances where you're strong, and are you aware of the stances where you're weak, so that you can ask for help? Forget coaching someone else. You're asking for a coach for yourself. Systems awareness. Are you a continuous learner as a coach? And remember, we're all coaches. So do you have a curious mindset? Are you developing yourself? Self-care is part of self-mastery. Are you it's that metaphor of putting on your own oxygen mask before you put it on others? Or are you taking care of yourself? For example, I see a lot of Agile coaches, and they coach people and they're like, you have excessive WIP, work in progress. You have exceeded your WIP limits. You are working too hard. You're thrashing. But when I look at the coach, I'm like, well, no, not only is your client thrashing, but you're thrashing. You're not practicing what you preach. You how can you coach someone? I'm kidding around a little bit, but how can you coach someone if your role model is not underscoring what you're telling them? And that needs to matter. So it needs to be aligned and balanced. Are you service oriented? Are you serving the client? One of the keys for this self-mastery is I would highly recommend all of you, independent of your role. Do you have a coach and do you have a mentor? Are you coachable? Are you mentorable? So do you have them, and then are you doing it? Any Agile coach should not only be coaching others, but should be having a coach for themselves. And it's really important. Walking your talk, again, remember that self-mastery, walking your talk. We're not just telling people to do something. We're willing, we believe it. It's in our DNA. So that's an important aspect of the wheel. The X-Wing model really didn't not talk about it. It just didn't amplify self-mastery nearly as much as the growth wheel does. So I want to pull that out. These are the primary stances. So if you remember in the X-Wing model, there were four primary stances: teaching, mentoring, facilitating, and professional coaching. Remember that, asking good questions and helping the client to figure out their own journey, solve their own challenges as much as you possibly can. So in this, the coaching stance is the professional coaching stance. Facilitation is just the same as the X-Wing. And then what the wheel did is it took mentoring and teaching and it put them together in guiding learning. if that resonates with everyone. So it combined those two, and then it added two stances that didn't exist in the X-Wing model. One is advising, and the other is leading. Advising is that consultative stance. Whereas a coach, sometimes, one of the problems with Agile coaches is what if the client can't discover the answer on their own, and you're asking them 1,000 questions? Sometimes I call it death by 1,000 questions. And a lot of Agile coaches fall into this trap, and they're very reluctant to provide advice. And you want to be careful when providing advice, because you don't want to overly advise the client. You want them to own the outcomes. You want them to own their game plan. You want them to own their agenda and their learning. But at the same time, sometimes they need a little bit of a boost. They need a little bit of advice. So in this case, the wheel gave permission for coaches to bring expertise and provide counsel, to be a sounding board, to be that sounding board, and to provide options. When I'm operating an advisory stance, I'm normally not telling a client what to do. I'm normally identifying options for them to choose. And I may be giving them some, based on those options, I may be talking about the risk associated with them. This one usually works out. This one, even though it might be attractive, is highly risky. But it's the client's job to choose which option they're going to take. So option discussion is one of those providing counsel methods. And then leading really aligns, the leading stance aligns with self-mastery very well, because this is that lead in service to others, leading by example. Very often the coaches don't own the outcomes, and where we want the client to own it, the leading model says, hey, I can be a role model. I can show you very strongly, or I can be a change agent champion, or I'm leading by example very strongly. And so the coach isn't in the background. Sometimes the coach needs to step into the foreground. And many coaches are reluctant to do that. And it's not necessary to do any of these stances 100% of the time, but remember, it's in service to your client. What does the client need, and what in their agenda? And if you're coaching anyone, someone on your team, find out what their agenda is, what problem, and then think to yourself, what is the agenda, what outcome, and then what stance should I adopt to serve the client? And then go into that stance. And if it's not working real well, or if you complete something and you detect that, oh, a different stance would help them more, then you dance to another stance, and then you might dance to another stance. You don't want to be too frenetic, but it's never a good idea to stay in a singular stance in service to the client. They're going to need you to sense and respond, and to walk with them, because the world, it's a VUCA world, and there's a lot of complexity. The wheel also has a service, transforming, an agile lean practitioner, just like the X-Wing model was. So it has these similar stances. These 5 are the primary action stances. I would call these your experience stances, and they support transforming and serving. An agile lean practitioner are supporting you and supporting your clients when you're operating in these primary 5, if that makes sense to everyone. Now, one quick thing that the wheel did, another thing that the wheel did that the X-Wing model never did, was it talks about 5 levels of competency for 5 levels of skill in each competency. So for example, if I'm in facilitation, in that competency, in that stance, I can be a beginner, an advanced beginner, a practitioner, a guide, or a catalyst. And I'm gaining more experience through that. And what the wheel does is provide ideas. It doesn't grade you, but it provides ideas of what good looks like at a beginner. What does a typical beginner look like? And if I want to become a practitioner, what would my behavior look like there? What would my skill set look like there? So the wheel is a wonderful growth tool for identifying where you at now in your coaching journey, independent of your title, and where you want to grow yourself, and how do you reassess yourself. So the X-Wing model was never really growth oriented, and the wheel is very specifically growth oriented. So I wanted to call that out. So that's the wheel. That's the framework side of this talk. And I want to move on, and I want to talk about some coaching mindset aspects. Again, remember, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand. Probably at this break would be a good time to ask if you have them. But I'm going to flip into mindset. and there's not much here. There's some prime directives for coaching. And again, these are good just in general practice. So as a mindset, prime directive, do no harm. Right, it's that medical it's that doctor practice. Assume positive intent. I want all of you to jot that down in your notes. I think the world could be a better place if we assume positive intent in our teams and in our organization first, without assuming negative intent. Hold your clients as capable. Hold the client's agenda. I've already been amplifying that. Help them discover their way, not your way. Meet them where they are. Help the client focus on outcomes. I haven't amplified that enough. It's not about talking about things, it's about what is the client going to do. At the end of a coaching conversation, action planning, client action planning, not coach. It's not your job as a coach to do the work for the client, for the team, for the individual. It's how to help them to clarify what are they going to do next, what action. When are we going to get together in our next coaching session to review your actions and then to have another coaching conversation? I amplified this as well. I would argue that we should do a better job very often in teams, in team dynamics, agile team dynamics. I see people meeting teams where they want them to be. Oh, you need to be, you need to have this velocity, you need to have this quality. They're meeting them in the future and not meeting them where they are. It's a really good practice. And it really lacks empathy and it lacks connection. And it puts folks off. It's like, you're not joining me. You're just telling me what you expect and then expecting me to get there. And you're not acknowledging the challenges I have. You're not acknowledging our context. So that doesn't mean we cannot push the client. We can push the client, but we don't push them from our position or pull them towards our position. We meet them where they are. We accept their challenges and then we move them. Think about that if you're coaching individuals in your teams. If anyone here who's listening is a manager or a leader, think about the dynamics of that in your one-on-ones or any conversation you're having where you're trying to coach someone, coach their performance, coach their soft skills, meet them where they are. Another superpower in coaches is empathy. And empathy is not, you may think you're empathetic, but what I want to do is flip it around and say, walk in their shoes as much as you can. Like, I'm an Agile coach and I've been around thousands of Scrum teams, but one of the things I try to tell myself is every Scrum team that I meet that I'm coaching, I want to turn myself around and look at the world through their eyes. Because even if I've coached 1,000 teams, I've never coached this team. I've coached 1,000 team contexts and I have empathy from their perspective, but I don't have empathy for this team. So before I start telling them what to do or judging them or pulling them forward or not meeting them, why don't I just shut up and look at the world through their perspective, really turn myself around and really try to connect to, not sympathetically connect, but empathetically connect to what does the world look like from their point of view? What are their challenges? What's their history? How did they end up to be where they are? And then turn myself back around and say, now that I know that, it really helps to meet them with empathy. I think our coaching can be much more effective if we look at people from their point of view, meet them from their point of view first. Drop your baggage is another mindset aspect. We all have biases. One that I joke about sometimes is I have some biases, a bias against leaders sometimes. I stereotype leaders. I've been a senior leader in technology, so I have a high bar for leaders, and I don't have a lot of patience for leaders. And I have my own baggage, and some leaders have beat me up over time, or whatever. I have management stories I could tell. But that's not helpful as a coach if I'm coaching leaders, because I can bring that baggage to bear, and I need to release it, at least for the coaching session. I may not have to permanently release it, but I want to release it for the coaching session. So I don't bring that bias, even in my mind, I don't bring it into the coaching. So release that. One of the most important things you can do from a mindset perspective, and I think in general in your jobs, people talk too much today. There's a lot of talking about Agile. I'm Agile this, I'm Agile that, or I'm a leader or whatever. I'm serving leader. That the talk is wonderful. The talk is fine. What matters? Talk does not matter. behavior trumps talking. Walking your talk trumps, just moving your lips. So I want all of us to checkpoint when we're doing self-mastery and when we're coaching. When we're coaching someone, it's not about what they say, it's about what they do. And we're not done coaching until the clients change that behavior. So but it starts with, are we modeling that? Are we truth-telling? Are we risk-taking? Are we truly serving the client? Are we dropping our biases at the door and really making it? Not are we saying, oh, I'm a servant leader. That's easy to say. To be a servant leader and have your mindset really serve a team, that's a much more difficult and challenging shift to make. And you need to commit to that. So I'm going to pause there. To recap, I've talked about the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, coaching frameworks with the notion of stances. And then I've talked about some mindset bits of like things to think about to put on your mind. And the third activity, if you will, or coaching discussion is around what does a good coaching conversation look like, and try to set us up for practice. But are there any questions right now?
Well, if you feel more comfortable just writing your questions down, if you're the kind of person who do not want to speak up, go ahead and write any questions down in the questions tab, and I will share those with Bob. It's
Absolutely.
good to see some familiar names here. We've got some people that I even consider agile coaches there. So
Uh-oh.
yeah.
So agile coaches, we can all get better. So hopefully some of this is resonating with you, and don't be shy about asking any questions. So I'm going to move on into coaching conversations, and then we're going to have a pause, and then we'll see if there's any questions. But then what I'm excited about, a cool part of this talk, is then we're going to go into the scenarios, and I'm going to need some interaction. So everyone prepare, get your juices flowing for some interaction, okay? So coaching conversation, setup and practice. And it's a real simple notion. I think a coaching conversation has three parts, and I like a chess metaphor for it: opening moves, middle game, and end game. And this is any conversation you have as a coach. This could be a coaching conversation, like I said, with any client. It could be an individual, it could be a pair of leaders, it could be a leadership team, it could be a Scrum team, it could be an RTE team if you're in SAFe. It does a group, a community of practice, group of Scrum Masters, really doesn't matter. It's how we flow a conversation. So the opening moves, some of the aspects of an opening moves is ask permission. Don't just charge into a room, a virtual room or a real room, and start coaching someone. Ask them if it's okay to coach them. Is the timing right? Establish goals. Remember I was saying, establish goals, establish the client's agenda. Set the stage. Ask a few open-ended questions to orient yourself. Listen. Really activate your listening skills to see, which stance should we go to next. So when I say direction finding is opening moves, very often I start a coaching conversation in professional coaching stance, and I ask some probing, open-ended questions. But I'm also listening and sensing the environment, because I may need to move from professional coaching stance to another stance, and that's the direction finding. And remember, it's all in service to the client. It's in reaction, so you're sensing and responding to what you're feeling from your client, because again, we're serving their agenda. The middle game is sort of in the sandwich, if you will, where we're brainstorming. This is where if we change stance, we would talk about options or strategies. If I'm in an advising stance, I might be suggesting some strategies or doing some strategy brainstorming. Figuring out what problems are you seeing. These are the problems. Now I'm sharing which problems I'm seeing. What do you think the most important things are? Because there's so many challenges here. What's the number one challenge? So I might be flipping between advising and asking questions in coaching stance. We want to narrow, and we start planning or start narrowing down the list. We explore, we clarify. I'm doing in the middle here, in the middle game, I'm doing powerful questioning. And part of that powerful questioning is also powerful listening. And I'm really listening and clarifying what's going on. And then towards the end of the arc, and if this was a 30, let's say this is an hour discussion, I might have opening moves for 10 minutes. I might have end game for 10 minutes, and I might have, I don't know, 30 to 40 minutes for middle game, something like that. So there's nothing sacred about those times, but literally there's an arc. I don't want to spend 60 minutes in opening moves. I want to have an open middle close. I want to be able to close to the next time. So I don't want to be taking on too many topics. So that would be part of opening moves, and then widening, then the narrowing in middle game would be narrowing down to maybe one follow-up action. And then end game is closure, ownership, right? Like I talked about next steps, getting feedback as a coach. How did this work for you? How did we meet your agenda? What did we meet? What did we not meet? How can we do a better job? Was that stance effective for you, or could I have adopted a different stance in service to you? Could be some of that closing, and then sort of rinse and repeat. Now there's an idea in professional coaching. If there's any coaches listening in, the powerful questions is something that comes up a lot in professional coaching. And there's a book on Amazon that's totally focused on powerful questions, and it literally has thousands of open-ended powerful questions, and thousands of them. And one of the things that I find in coaches, almost independent of your experience, is picking powerful questions can be a challenge because there's so many of them. And you focus on, what's the right question I should ask next in service to my client, and it sort of breaks the flow of the coaching arc, rather than just having a simple set of questions to work with, and not getting caught up in the complexity of your question database. So I like this set of 7 coaching questions from Michael Stinier's the Coaching Habit. It's not an Agile coaching book. It's a leadership coaching book, but he has just a simple set of 7 questions that I get a lot of traction out. So I recommend this for novice to experienced coaching. What's on your mind is a wonderful opening move question. Wonderful opening move, and then listen. Activate your powerful listening. And then getting more information, and what else? And you can use and what else with a lot of the other questions. That's that additive. That's that peeling the onion question, and what else? Another peeling the onion question is, what's the real challenge here for you? You could do that in opening moves. You could do that in end game. Again, it's sort of like a 5 whys question. If you've ever heard the 5 whys, it's drilling in to get to, sort of more fundamental aspects of a challenge. What do you want? Now you can vary that. What do you want? What do you want as an outcome of this coaching session? What do you want the team to produce? What do you want? Connecting back to the client, getting the client to clarify that. A variation of what do you want is, how could we confirm that we achieved that? Or what is the validation, or what is the acceptance criteria, if you will, for that? I'd like number 5, how can I help? Now this isn't how can I do it for you, but how can I help you? How can I have the mindset of partner with you? And I think what's the real challenge? What do you want? How can I help? Or probably opening moves, but more so middle game. They can be landed in the middle game. I love 6 because very often today, folks are biting off more than they can chew. And it's a real problem for most people. So it's, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? It's evaluation of prioritization. It's a whip reduction question. It's a thoughtful question. It doesn't have to be, not everything has to be answered. Sometimes these questions, you just let them land, and it may just cause your client to be thinking later on about it. And that's fine. It'll come up in a later coaching session. And then, what was most useful to you is an end game question to me. You can use it elsewhere, but it's typically, what was most useful to you in this coaching session? What was most useful to you in our outcomes or our actions? What was most useful to you in how I showed up as a coach? How could I get better, etc. So there's only 7, and I think it's a nice set of questions to guide your coaching. So I thought I'd share that with you. I was talking about listening, and I want to just hit you with one one sort of slide that talks about listening. The Center for Creative Leadership has a 7-step, if you will, and it's not a serial step process, but effective listening steps or things to consider. Be attentive, ask open-ended questions. So this really goes back to the coaching questions, or the powerful questions. Ask probing questions. Request clarification as part of your listening. Did I hear you right? This is what I heard you say. Is that right? What's right and what's wrong? What did I miss in what I just told you? Paraphrase to get that kind of communication. Be attuned to and reflect feelings. So it's not just the words, but the emotional landscape that's going on, the emotional field, body language, emotion, tone. Be tuned into what's going on there. And then summarize. So paraphrase and summarization can be very effective. And then there's some other considerations for powerful listening. So I want to stop for questions, because now what I'm going to do is I want everyone to grab a piece of paper. Just grab something. Grab an electronic piece of paper, but preferably a piece of physical paper and a pencil or a pen. Grab it. And I want you to draw an arc. So an arc like this. And I just draw an arc on the paper and have lines just separated into 3 areas, which is opening moves, middle game, and end game. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to show you a scenario, and I want you to jot down on the paper. For this exercise, I want you to pretend or put yourself, you are an Agile coach, not by title, but by practice and skill and competency. You're a coach, and you're going into this scenario, and I want you to plan across your arc in the opening moves, middle game, and end game. I want you to plan some of the things. How are you going to conduct this coaching conversation? So what are some things you can place along the arc? You could talk about stances. How are you going to enter? How do you want to close? You can talk about mindset. You could talk about questions you might want to ask. You could actually have 2 arcs for a scenario. You say, you know what, I think for this scenario, I need to coach the team and I need to coach the Scrum Master. So you might have 2 arcs and you have different conversations. So it's not every scenario is not just a 1 arc, 1 coaching conversation scenario. We're going to just spend a little time to get you to drill into your experience, to be playful with constructing some coaching arcs based on the scenario. So before we do that, any questions? And I'm going to let this slide up for everyone. So I'm going to read the scenario and then I'm going to come back to this slide just as an anchor. Any questions? I'll wait a minute or so.
Not sure why everyone is quiet.
Oh, well, we can't be quiet. Well, then let's go to a scenario. Darn it, because we can't be quiet for that because I need feedback. So here's a scenario. You're an Agile coach who is trying to spearhead, and whether, I don't care what your role is. I just promoted you or demoted you. You are an Agile, Magdi, you are an Agile coach who is trying to spearhead an Agile transformation. You continuously try to make the methods versus mindset point, but it doesn't land very well. That could be the doing Agile versus being Agile. Methods is doing and mindset is being. The COO, I didn't get that out right. The COO of the organization who supports the initiative asks you to help them. 1, to explain what Agile is. 2, what it isn't. And 3, what is the value impact proposition? So they've asked you for a coaching conversation that you haven't had yet, right? And that's your coaching. That's your coaching setup. So what to do? What conversation or conversations to have? So now I want to come back to the arc, and I want everyone. I'm going to give you a few minutes to be playful with putting some notes about either how you're going to have that conversation with the COO. What does the initial coaching conversation look like? Or do you have any preparatory coaching conversations you have before you even have that? Or both of them? So let's go back to the arc. So everyone, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to take some notes. And then I'm going to want to hear people share some of your approaches. So not only take the notes, but be prepared to share. And there's nothing wrong. There are no right or wrong strategies. There's only your coaching strategy. So put some notes down, and then I want some shares before we move on. And remember, everything we talked about, I want you to talk about the mindset. What mindset are you going to go in with? What stances might you use? What questions might you ask? What questions might you not ask? What stances might you not want to use? I want you to, this is like a game plan for this coaching conversation in ARC format. So throw down any ideas. This is how you're going to show up as a coach. You have about a minute left. So don't lean too, don't be too opening move centric. Sort of put ideas in each of those areas. How are you going to open? What's the middle game going to look like? And then end game. I would be thinking about my stance mix. I would be thinking about my mindset mix, particularly for entry. You might even put a note. What if the COO didn't resonate with things? So what if you had a friendly COO conversation? And what if there was some resistance? How might you handle that? What would be your contingency plan in your arc? Let me give you that. Let me give you that scenario again, just quickly. That's your scenario.
Bob, I might want to clarify. The CEO is restricting you to what you are going to talk about. He explicitly said, explain what Agile is and what's not. Is this how you want to? Is this how a consulting, a coaching session would start? I mean, I was hoping that the CEO let me start the way I want to start.
Actually, Magdi, I think you just stole some of my thunder. So that's what I'm kidding. That's what the COOs asked for. I would ask some questions.
Yeah, okay. All right. Got that. So I don't have to address what he told me immediately. I don't have to. I still have
I mean,
to.
you're the coach. You can do whatever you want. How I would attack this, though, is I would probably ask some questions to sort of explore, like, what do you know? What do you don't? What is your why? Why are you asking me this stuff?
Okay.
Where have we missed the communication?
Okay. Got it.
This might even be a conversation, so entering with some powerful questions, and then I could get into teaching mode perhaps.
Okay, good.
And just explain what Agile is, and then another follow-up conversation could be the others. You see it? It's just it's your art. You decide how to apply these techniques to it. All right, everyone. Magdi, that was actually very good. I want to hear from some other folks. So that I don't want to tell you. How would you attack this using this notion of coaching arcs? Anyone want to share something? How would you enter? So Magdi and I talked about entering with open-ended questions. What I would say is more discovery. And I think that's a really good way. Even if you're upset, even if you think, I need to coach Bob because he's pig-headed and he's not buying Agile. right? Even if I think that, that may not be an effective way to enter the coaching conversation. I might be more curious. So
Uh,
anyone?
yes, I think Anna has something to share. So Anna, I'm going to open your microphone. Feel free to talk, please.
Hi, thank you. So I don't know if I have all of the terms that you've used, but I mean, I think for me in this situation, I'd want to start out with, asking the CEO to explain to me, what they think agile is.
Ah,
Kind of get that, that starting point, and then maybe ask permission to go into, some of the things that I think it is or that I've seen, and then kind of end that opening session, with figuring out, what they want to achieve from changing, this mindset.
I love that, Anna. And with a curious mindset. So I might, given what you just said, I would amplify. I need to be curious, not judgy, not judgmental when I come in, not presuming or perceiving, but just really curious and ask open-ended questions. The other thing I would amplify to align with what you said is really do active listening, if that makes sense, right? Because as the COO is talking to me about Agile, they might be getting animated in certain areas. Like, for example, if they were talking about velocity and we don't have, right, I thought we would have accurate velocity and there's not enough velocity and I'm not getting enough points and they're waving their hands and they're very, I would note that, at least I might note it in my conversation to them as a coach, but I might note it, hey, that may be a hot spot for them. So again, I'm not just listening to the words, I'm listening to the emotion in the room, I'm listening to the body language. So my radar is up, but absolutely. And then to me, it would be fair to say, turn that into a teaching moment. I think that's what you, so I could flip stances from professional coaching, curiosity, ask questions, powerful questions, open-ended questions mode, to maybe there's a teaching opportunity. And then in the end, talk about next steps. That's a perfect arc. You with me for that first session? Any other reactions? Or
Uh,
Anna, any reactions to what I said?
Bob, I'm going to ask you for clarification. What would you do if if what you thought to be an open-ended question really runs into a dead end? What if Anna says, what do you think Agile is? And the CEO says, well, I don't know. That's why I brought you in.
I think it's maybe challenged. So maybe I'm getting some resistance and say, I remember when we talked and wow, you don't have as much Agile experience as I do. You do have some ideas. You've been practicing it for 3 months and you've been observing it. So I would turn it around and just reframe it, Magdi, and say, look, what do you think? You may not know it all, but what do you know? What do you think about it? What are your opinions? What do you like? What do you dislike? And try to mine that client. The other thing is let your open-ended questions land. So much as a consultant, Magdi, if we don't tolerate silence very well, if that makes sense, right? And we want to fill in for silence. And I think as a coach, sometimes let silence do its job. You turn it right around and say, I hear you and I respect that question, but I really want to mine you for what you know. And I know you know more than zero. So please share. Anything else on that one? From one other person? And there's
And
and Anna's was fine. It was perfect, but someone else's approach would be just as perfect.
I don't see other hands up.
All
So
right, let's go to another scenario. Okay. So let's see, which one do I want to?
this is very inspiring, Bob. Really inspiring. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to use this one. There is an I in team. I have 4 scenarios, everyone, but I'm trying to pick. I'm just being silly. I'm trying to pick ones that I'd like to hear the reaction. So this is another scenario. Same, get a different piece of paper, or but again, same approach, different scenario. Put an arc down, and all we're doing now is just game planning. Once we start the coaching conversation, things could go anywhere. Like Magdi was, what if they don't answer the question? Well, okay, and we might Another reaction to what Magni said is like, oh, this didn't go. I might react and say, well, this didn't go the way I'd hoped. Why don't we stop this meeting right now and let me prepare a deck to share with you what Agile is, and we'll have another coaching session or something like that. So all the ARC is a starting point, a game plan, a strategy, and if it works, that's fine. It's at least a good start. So here's the scenario: you're the Scrum Master. I've now promoted you, demoted you, or I've given you another role. You're the Scrum Master of a team who has recently adopted Scrum. One team member, the team lead, is really struggling to working within the dynamics of a cross-functional team. Because they know so much of the domain, they are negative, belligerent in meetings, don't like to collaborate with others, and are increasingly disruptive. Everyone with me? They're great. They have great domain knowledge and great skills. They're just not playing well with others, and Agile's forcing them to play or encouraging them to play well with others. And you're the Scrum Master who's guiding this teamwork. So another team member has pulled you aside, literally begging you to do something because this dynamic is becoming intolerable because the team needs this person's help because they know so much. So what to do, what conversation or conversations to have, what arcs to have. So I'm going to give you a few more. This time I'm going to give you just a couple minutes and deeply think. Arc, stances, mindset. Maybe you need to enter with a different mindset here. I don't know. What does the arc look like? What are the conversations? What are the mindset? You might have a happy path and a sad path arc in this case. Everyone would be. The happy path would be the team lead reacts well. The sad path would be the team lead reacts poorly. You might have different arcs in your game plan, so you're prepared. So let me shut up and give you some space. Now I'm going to bring you back to this slide.
Could you put the scenario back, please, for a minute, for a sec?
Sure. In fact, we'll leave that up there. Everyone, get about a minute, 90 seconds. Okay, everyone. Same debrief as last time. I just want to see if anyone has, and again, and I'm not joking, I'm not just tricking you. There is no right or wrong here, right? We can't predict. The situations are endless, but it's what we're doing here, and I didn't amplify it in the slides as much as an important part is preparing for having a game plan for your coaching is a critical step. That doesn't mean the plan unfolds the way you anticipate, but at least you're getting your head in the game with your client. So anyone have any feedback on how you would approach that scenario?
Not seeing any hands up yet, not even written comment.
Magdi, can I put you on the spot? How would you
Okay.
approach it?
All right. Well, since that team lead is a very important element in the team, I would just approach him, for instance, or her, and say, what do you think we can do to improve the dynamics of cross-functional in this team? Because that's very important in the Agile paradigm. So get him to tell me what we can do. I mean, I know inside me that the problem is him or her, but I put them on the spot. It says, what can we do to improve the dynamic of the cross function?
I think that's a fair, way to start. That might be an opening move. Another opening move before that, Magdi, is I might suggest asking them, are they aware of their behavior, and how aware of
okay.
their behavior
I
are
thought
they?
about that, but I didn't want to insult anybody. I didn't want anyone to get defensive.
But how you phrase it, you might say, you know what, we're doing this agile. How's that settling with you personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this collaborative, right? All for one for all agile process. You've been doing it for 3 months. How's it settling?
Okay.
How's the collaboration going? How are you observing the team? And just those are several open-ended questions, and just sort of sensing where their head is at. Maybe in a lightweight way. What are you struggling with? What are you not struggling with? What do you like? What do you dislike? So again, you were in that ballpark as you were going to, what can we repair or how can we get better? But another thing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but also where are they? Maybe reconnoiter a little bit. Anyone else have an opening move that you had? I'd like to hear another voice, because I put Magdi on the spot, and that's not fair. And anyone else? I want to ask everyone, how do we want it to land? Now, we can't control the landing, but we can guide the landing. So I'm going to the end game, right? Look at this context from an end game perspective. What do we want to try to as an outcome or a next step? And Magdi, you have any ideas? Like, in a perfect world, how would you like to exit?
I would again put the same person on the spot and say, starting our next meeting, I'd like you to help me watch for how it is working, how the dynamics is working.
Yeah. And what Magdi did there, everyone, is a little bit of partnership. I detected, so not only asked, but there was some partnership in his language, right? We're in this together. And you notice I was talking about that. So there was that subtle, we're in it together, but it's your job. Most of the action is for you, but we're in this together. Help me to figure that out. I like that. And again, it's not right or wrong. I'm not grading, but that would be a wonderful ending. It also, Magdi, leads into another coaching conversation. So very often when I say coaching arc, everyone, it is not a one-time arc where there's this epiphany and then a magical ending. Often these are bouncing balls. That there's one coaching conversation and then there's a follow-up conversation, then a follow-up conversation with an unpredicted number of balls. Sometimes you can accomplish something in 2 or 3 sessions. Like, this person's behavior may change and evolve in 2 or 3 or 4 coaching sessions. If I'm coaching a leader, I might be doing that periodically for a year, but it's a series of connected dots. I'm looking at go ahead, Magdi.
I just have Will here who has something to say. So Will, I'm going to go ahead and open your microphone.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, well, I certainly agree with what was said. I guess what I had been thinking about was getting, different perspectives on the problem at the very beginning, like talk to the person's manager, talk to the person who, reported this, and as well talk to the team lead pretty much along the lines you said as to, how it's going, and maybe get from them what they would want to change about the process if they don't like it, and potentially close out by saying, okay, we can change our process. This is, some things that we can do as a team to adjust our process. So let's try the one thing this person suggests, and, we'll do that for a sprint and go over it. And that way we're listening to the person's concerns, on a process level and trying to do something about it besides just listening to them.
Is it Will? If I catch it, it's Will. Will, that's a wonderful way to land because we're at the end of time. A wonderful way to land this because what you illustrated is the multi-coaching arc. And I think this is a multi-coaching arc situation, and you nailed it, right? So not looking at it as like just the one conversation, but a set of interrelated conversations. Now, not 200 of them, but I might want to talk to the person's boss. I might want to talk to the person. I might want to talk to maybe get some feeling from the team or whoever is really sort of troubled with it. And I might want to triangulate these conversations. Now, I think ultimately it goes to the team lead's behavior. You with me? But which arc do I start with? I might actually go to the team lead's boss. Like I might go there, and I might actually be curious about what coaching are they doing to the team lead, right? What messages and goal setting are they doing? I mean, it may not be a team lead problem. I'm just kidding, but it may be the direction of the goal setting for them. So thinking of these arcs as interrelated, I think that was a wonderful way to land this. So everyone, I just want to go to my last slide.
Before you go, I just want to touch on one important thing because I'm always nervous about going to the boss. Because going to the boss, any word I say with the boss is going to be communicated back with the team lead, and that might create some friction in the team. Is that recommended to go to the boss? Really?
I'm not going to the boss and complaining about Bob Gale team lead. I'm going to the boss, and I mean, again, there's some subtlety, Magdi, or hopefully there is. I just might be inquisitive. We're just asking questions.
Okay.
So what are the
With
goals?
no reference to the team lead's behavior.
No, yeah, that I would not be talking about. I would just be
Okay.
curious. Again, curiosity is our friend. Open-ended questions are our friend. And again, exploring context so we can be more effective in guiding to that outcome.
Okay. Sorry
All
to
right,
interrupt.
everyone.
Go ahead.
No, you were perfect. Everyone, I want to thank you. And all I'm trying to do, remember going back to the beginning, I said I was hoping to create some curiosity around coaching, not being an Agile coach, but coaching competencies. Because I think thinking this way will make you better in whatever role over time, in whatever role you're in. So, and be more well-rounded. So thank you for the time. And it just was, Magdi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We are thankful to you and grateful to you for sharing your experience with us. This was a great session. This is very inspiring. Thank you again for your time. For everyone, thank you for being with us. This webinar is being recorded. The recording is going to be available at the International Institute for Software Testing website starting next week. And since I hear Bob already volunteered to share with you the actual slides, if you want the actual slides, electronic copy, please send us an email to info@testinginstitute.com. I just don't want to go and send it to everybody. If you really want to get an electronic copy, and if this is okay with Bob, then please send us a message at info@testinginstitute.com, and we'll be happy to send you an electronic version of the presentation. But the recording will be posted on the website. Thank you again.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.